This is interviewing tip number 66 of 101 tips for interviewing and interrogation. You want to get a pen and pencil to take care of this next one and a little paper to go with it. So welcome back to tip number 66. We're going to cover something special this time. This is going to be a 5-part series, a very important part of the interviewing and investigative process. You definitely want to get pen and pencil and paper on this one over the next 5-part series, very important in the interview and investigative process. I'm going to cover what's called the cycle of behavior. Now, I've looked several places and I can't really find the first point of origin, the first individual that came up with or proposed this idea. I first saw this back in the mid-'80s, and of course on serial behavior and serial murder and serial rape and cult crimes. But there's been other sources all the way through terrorist training, anti-terrorist operations, through active shooter scenarios, through other scenario forms. So I can't really tell you where the point of origin, who's the first person that came up with this. But it's very deeply embedded in the intelligence gathering and the interviewing and evidence-based investigation process. So the cycle of behavior, now I'm going to give it to you in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As the interviewer, you'll work, or as investigator in many cases, you're going to work backwards toward the beginning point. Okay, now the cycle of behavior, it applies to obviously crimes that are in serial nature and have been done more than once, but it can be happening or used in developing a complex crime. It may not necessarily apply to an impulse type of incident where two idiots get drunk and have a fight in the parking lot. Okay, that's not the type of thing I'm talking about. That's just trying to control your behavior and your anger. Okay. What we're looking here for is the planning and the thought process of the subject. This process is going to be especially good when you're trying to determine if the subject is in fact psychotic, because there are elements in each of these points will show signs of psychosis and delusional thinking, which indicates they're unaware of the consequences of behavior and it's just abnormal thinking or planning. But also very good determining the subject who is a mental deficient subject and intellectual deficit disorder. Will they have the skills to prep and plan, or, for example, a juvenile, or someone who claims to have a memory lapse, not the victim. Okay, this one would be victims. This is going to be obviously the subjects in very rare situations. If you have a, quote, serial victim who keeps creating serial victimized the crimes, they become the victims, you may be able to pick this up in that behavior. Okay? So now, what we want to do, I want you to start thinking like your subject. In the work I do with Gary Bills and Randy Merriman, and we're working with our anti-terrorist groups and training Karen ID and so forth, human behavior, we talk about a statement by Sun Tzu, loosely stated. If you have no information, no knowledge about your enemy, you only have a 50-50 chance of winning that battle. The more you learn intelligence you gather about your enemy, you exponentially increase your chances of winning in the battle. The same thing applies to the investigative process and to the interviewer. So let's talk about the first step. It's the fantasy process. So in your subject's mind, there becomes the seedling of the event. Okay, the event's all the way down here at the end. Now, for example, let's take, for example, law enforcement traditionally. Here's the event, okay? Over here, and this is from your frame of reference. We typically working after the fact and working back toward just the event itself. I want you to start thinking pre-event, or as we say in terrorist operations, I want you to think left of bang. Start seeing things that develop before the subject got to this point. First step, the furthest left, part number 1, is the fantasy in the subject's mind. This is when they begin to think, how would I get attention? What would I do? What would I like to act out on? What would the victims be like? What do I expect to gain if I carry out this act? What is my goal or purpose of doing this act? Whether it's the arson, the auto theft, it's the black hat planning the IT attack, whether it's the terrorist operation, whether it's the serial rapist, whether it's the auto thief, whether it's a credit card fraud, white-collar fraud, etc., white-collar crime. The nugget starts there and it begins to grow and it becomes an obsession. And so the end game has started out here at number 1 before you ever see the event, your subject may never ever progress to acting out, or may only take it to 2 or 3 steps. The thing is, as an investigator or an intelligence field, can I see this develop ahead of time and interdict it and stop it? For the investigator, the interviewer, I want to work backwards to find what that drive is. Their acts out here are nothing more than the harvest of their thoughts from the beginning. Once they've crossed that threshold in their mind and they perceive themselves as acting out and doing it, okay, they're on the path to carrying out that act. So the more they think about it, and if they happen to verbalize it, the greater the risk are they're going to carry the act out in itself. So what you're seeing is the harvest of those thoughts. The end game tells you how advanced the process has been, how advanced their thinking has been. If they're doing serial events, they'll go back, do multiple events, they'll go back and reset the thinking and reset the other phases as we go along. So think about it, the subject as to why he would think this. What's he after? What would they gain? What is the purpose of their actions? I want you to remember that term. We covered it just recently in our past series. Look for purpose of action. What are their purpose of action? Where did it start in the thinking process? As a man thinketh, so is in the heart, so is he. Remember that biblical verse. So start with that point. Remember, that's the end game, and when we get through, we'll be able to work in reverse, get back to that spot. Okay? Meantime, hit the share button. Hit me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, Instagram, Twitter. I communicate a lot through there and give you information. If you want to learn more about these classes, particularly this process of cycle of behavior and the advanced interrogation I'm sharing with you here, you've never heard this in interrogation training, I'll bet you. I know you haven't. Because I think I'm the only one that's sharing and teaching with you and getting you to think through the interrogation process. So if you want to learn more, reach out to me. Let's see if we can't customize a course for your military unit, your intelligence unit, law enforcement, and loss prevention. It's the same process, and risk managers. So in the meantime, until I come back with you again with tip number 67, this is Stan Walters. Be safe.